So after watching the Snyder cut last night of Donald Trump's speech to Congress, I've been referring to this now as the Don Crow era of politics because it seems like we've decided as a nation that we can now retreat from decency. We can, you know, double back and resume and enhance our targeting and hurting of marginalized people. Like when Donald Trump said America is back last night, I think what he meant to say, based on the reaction, was remember how awesome it was being in the eighth grade in the 1980s, where movies had to have chicks showing their boobies, and that was all they were good for. And you could say the F word liberally, and there weren't too many blacks in your neighborhood, and African countries were just funny names that you could mock. Remember that? America is back. That's what it felt like last night. The energy, I believe, from the Republicans is what I would call white supremacist gay fraternity honoring Donald Trump as their member of the year. That sort of seemed what it was like. But in terms of this being the Don Crow era, it just seems like there's a retreat, that it's open season again on, and making up for lost time. Like remember those years under Obama and Biden where more people had opportunity and rights were extended to other groups. Well, now we have to double back twice as hard because we have to make up for all those painful years that had nothing to do with us and were only improving the chances and opportunities and rights of other people. Well, we need to double down and mock them. I mean, he was mocking African countries like their names last night. Like this is the bigoted suburban eighth grade president from the 1980s. Like the man has not moved past just one of the guys and Porky's. This is what we're being governed by. And there are enough Americans, and white Americans especially, who are like, yes, I loved 1980s raunch comedies. That's what I want as my president. Now, I've talked before about masculinity and whatnot, and this weird vision of masculinity that the right wing seems to have that basically means homoerotic weightlifting videos, sexual control of women, and being able to say slurs and offensive jokes. And that apparently, that's it. That's manhood. Now they talk about it like when men were men in traditional manhood, but that makes you think they're thinking of like the 1950s or the 1850s cowboys or some shit, whatever era but they're really just talking about 1980s trash, which is obviously when Donald Trump was at his heyday. So Donald Trump, when he says make America great again, he really means make America like a shit pile of greed and sleaze like the 1980s. And there are enough white people in this country who either want it to be like that or remember it. And we're like, yeah, that was when I could do coke and bang my secretary and she couldn't go all Me Too on me like some stupid bitch. And that's what he means when America is back. It's 1980s trash is what Donald Trump wants because those are his glory days. Those are his 4 touchdowns at Polk High moments, if I can quote the great Al Bundy. But I don't understand whatever happened to the other values of masculinity. Like I really want to ask whether it's Joe Rogan or any member of the Republican caucus, what about keeping your word? What about helping friends? What about helping those who need help and not being a bully? What about the strong, silent type? What about my word is my bond? Why are these parts of, if you want to go with the traditional male values, it seems pretty awful to be able to say, no, I just want all the sleazy, shitty aspects of being a traditional male, but please don't hold me to account and expect me to do all the other things that matter on a moral or spiritual level. I just want the tangible benefits of being a traditional male piece of shit. So that's what we have in the White House. He gave a 19-hour speech last night, but he, let some Gomer Pyle, like Private Pyle from Full Metal Jacket kid, get into West Point. They Simba'd Lion King, a kid who had brain cancer and is now an honorary member of the Secret Service. Hopefully he's on Trump's detail. It was just, and then of course, just ritualistic bashing of trans people. I mean, it's the Jim Crow era is, a Mount Rushmore low moment and low era of this country. Okay. Basically, progress was being made during Reconstruction, and to get Rutherford B. Hayes into the White House, there was a compromise, one of the worst, one of the most evil compromises in this country's history, where the Republicans agreed to stop monitoring the South, basically took the handcuffs off the South in exchange for the presidency, and then the South got to bring out Jim Crow and 80 or 90 years of absolute disgraceful racial terror and violence. Which is a bad thing if you're a MAGA person. I'm sorry, maybe I should be clear, because I really don't know how this country still feels about the Civil War and Jim Crow. That's bad. That is what we call a bad thing in my woke circles. So I'm not saying that the Don Crow era is going to yield the same amount of violence and horror, but on a moral level, on a spiritual level as a country, not to sound too much like Cornel West, Brother Cornel West, we have to take care of the spiritual brother. But it's the fact that we are retreating from helping people, and that in and of itself is viewed as a victory for one side. Like the shame, the stench of having to extend rights to other people is such a problem in and of itself, that the only recourse is vengeance. Which, if you just break that down, it was the same thing. Just having to watch Black men in Congress and voting, even though it didn't take away the vote of white men after the Civil War, was an affront so great that it required nearly a century of violent vengeance to feel better. That's what Donald Trump is doing now. It's like, it's not a violent vengeance. It's like a morally disgraceful, sloppy, white trash Mountain Dew vengeance, though, where you have all these geeks. I mean, looking at J.D. Vance, who looks sort of somewhere between Teen Wolf and a Neanderthal, wearing a suit like Unfrozen Caveman Lawyer and Teen Wolf, and Mike Johnson, who I never thought I'd see another Republican make Mike Pence look super heterosexual. But man, Mike Johnson, I mean, the lust this dude has in his eyes for Trump, and the desperation to be part of the cool kids club. He should definitely be reporting to his teenage son about porn use after the way he looked at Trump last night. But we're now in this era, the Don Crow era, and I'm sorry if I keep repeating that and I seem too much like a thirsty Thomas Friedman trying to coin my own term, but hey, if it works, is that it's about retreating from helping people, because helping people and extending the rights and privileges and joys of America to other people under Obama and under Biden, that in and of itself was an insult and an affront, even if it didn't impact any of them directly, just knowing that they were getting stuff. And Trump is their Mountain Dew vengeance. So this is where we're at now, mocking African countries, targeting trans people, labeling everything you don't like laughable and DEI and woke. And so when he says America is back, I'm sure many people in Jim Crow era said America is back. And I don't think, though the effects may be different, I have no doubt that the heart of Donald Trump is Jim Crow at its core. And so that's what we have now. We have a government of stupid, vengeful cruelty, and the vengeance is simply other people getting to have rights too. So good luck. It was an atrocious speech, and it's an atrocious moment for this country. But yeah, some people want, the worst parts of the 1980s back, and they decided to elect one of the worst parts of the 1980s president. So garbage speech. Welcome to Don Crow, everybody.